I'm Noel. I still remember the look on my father's face when he stood in front of the Magnolia, my luxury apartment complex. His eyes were wide, and his face had turned a sickly shade, much like spoiled milk. "This land was never meant to be like this," he said sharply, his voice laced with disbelief and frustration. I simply folded my arms, a small smile playing on my lips. He had no idea that this was just the beginning of the transformation. Let me take you back to the time when my world was completely different. I grew up in a family where traditional gender roles were deeply ingrained. My father, Henry Thompson, was a powerful and domineering man who believed that men were the breadwinners and the decision-makers, while women were supposed to stay in the background, supporting their male counterparts. My brother, Lucas Thompson, was his pride and joy. At 28, Lucas was the golden boy, the one who could do no wrong in my father's eyes. I, on the other hand, was constantly overlooked. I was told to be grateful for whatever little was thrown my way. My dreams and aspirations were often dismissed as silly and unimportant. My mother, Grace Thompson, was a meek woman who followed my father's lead without question. She was always in the shadows, doing her best to keep the peace in the family. One day, my father announced the inheritance. It was no surprise to anyone. Lucas was given a state-of-the-art penthouse in New York City. The penthouse had floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a breathtaking view of the city skyline and a private gym equipped with the latest fitness machines. It was everything a young man could dream of. I, however, was given an old, abandoned farmhouse in a small town called Pinewood. When I first laid eyes on it, I was disheartened. The roof was caving in, looking like an old, tattered hat that had seen better days. The walls were full of holes, thanks to termites that had feasted on the wood for years. Lucas laughed when he saw it. "Are you going to raise cows here, Noel?" he asked, his voice filled with mockery. I forced a smile and said, something like that. While Lucas was busy throwing lavish parties in his penthouse, surrounded by friends and champagne, I was hard at work. I knew that this dilapidated farmhouse was my chance to prove myself. I started by tearing the farmhouse down to its very foundation. It was a long and arduous process, but I was determined. I then hired a team of architects, engineers, and designers. They were initially skeptical about my plans, but I was passionate and convinced them to believe in my vision. The construction began, and it was like watching a miracle unfold. Steel beams were erected, and glass panels were installed. The sun would catch the glass, creating a beautiful, shimmering effect. Within a year, a magnificent 12-unit luxury apartment complex stood where the old farmhouse once stood. I named it the Magnolia, a symbol of strength and beauty. The renters started moving in, and the money started rolling in like clockwork. It was a steady, reliable income stream, and I finally felt a sense of accomplishment. But the real turning point came 2 weeks later. Lucas showed up at my door, pale and sweating. He had lost the penthouse. It wasn't due to bad luck, it was because of his reckless financial decisions. He had secretly used the penthouse as collateral for a series of failed investments. The bank had seized everything, and he was left with nothing. Meanwhile, the land that my father had thought was worthless had tripled in value. The Magnolia was generating more income in 1 month than Lucas had made in a year. My father, who had always been so proud and overbearing, suddenly became humble. He came to me and asked if Lucas could move into one of my apartments. I calmly slid a lease agreement across the table. "Market rate," I said firmly. "No family discount." He stared at me in disbelief, as if he couldn't believe that I would treat my own brother this way. But I had my reasons. I looked him in the eye and said, "For years, you taught me that men deserved everything and women should be content with leftovers. Well, it turns out that those leftovers can turn into a feast. Today, Lucas pays rent to his little sister. And every month, when the payment notification hits my phone, it sounds like applause. It's a reminder of how far I've come, from being the underestimated daughter to building my own empire. If you love stories where underdogs turn their lives around, then you'll love this. Because sometimes, the best revenge is to build so high that those who once underestimated you have to come to you, hat in hand, asking for a chance. So, subscribe now and be a part of more such inspiring stories.